This is the Reality Checkmate podcast.
Still, just one reality nerd who likes to break down strategy and psyche. For today's podcast, I'm finally covering the Traitors US Season 4, Episode 5, titled, If You're Gonna Come For Me, I'll Finish You. It has been too long since I've been able to sit down and record, but it is great to be back. I realize that the season is already completed, so most of what I talk about is old news, but I am a completionist and I also need the practice. So please forgive the delay and never mind my bad takes on what actually happened. I have not watched any further than this current episode, so I am experiencing this in real time. So let's get into it. First into breakfast for this episode are Eric, Natalie, Dorinda, and Candace. And they are still sad about losing Tiffany, especially Dorinda. Eric says he didn't sleep well over it, feeling the guilt. They talk about Ron's accusation of Mara, and they see him playing victim and going to accuse her. Dorinda is equating Ron's reticence to get to know people with him being a traitor, or perhaps it is about not wanting to have him around because he is not friendly enough. That actually may be a more accurate reason for what is happening. Another group comes in and we get a confessional from Kristen, who's concerned about Colton. And then the next group of people come in. These are the ones who could have been murdered. It includes Michael, Jam Jam, and Ron. Ron talks about the tepid applause that he hasn't had since being an open micer. And at least he's clocking their reactions to him rather than being oblivious, as some, like Michael, seem to be. Unfortunately, he doesn't seem willing or able to change his game or his gameplay because of it, or to find a way around it. Michael says he has Ron on his list now, again, still, and he believes that he's not as meek as he appears. Then what eventually becomes a common refrain throughout this episode, there's a whole discussion about Colton being on The Bachelor and not having come out yet. Since Michael is in the group, during this discussion, his homophobic thoughts surrounding Colton seem to percolate throughout the day, but we'll get to that later. In any case, the next group to arrive is Mara, Lisa, and Steven. And then the final group, Tara and Johnny. So we find out they murdered Monet. I am so sad about that. I didn't think they had it in them to murder more strategically at this point. So good for the traitors. I had said that Steven's murder would have been more strategic than Johnny, which I believe is still true, but Monet was also up there with Steven as far as strategy goes. Obviously, because Monet said Candace's name, I think they pushed to remove him over Steven. I do feel bad for Rob, and too bad for Monet and the faithful's chance for revenge, that he only shared his suspicions about Lisa to Candace. The group gives a toast to Monet where someone says, "To the best dressed," and Lisa has to chime in with, "To one of the best dressed." That's mildly catty of her. Lisa says this is the first time one of the traitors has been brought up by Monet, and they have to stop that. I do find this reasoning problematic, though, especially as we get down to fewer and fewer faithful. It's just going to happen. I don't know that you need to stop it as a traitor, especially if your name hasn't come up before the end. That can look suspicious. If this does happen, you need to direct the vote and to vote out those people. Therefore, I think this gameplay will get them in trouble in the future. It's not that you don't want them to bring up your name. Instead, you want people who bring up your names to be discredited, or that they don't have any information about you or for you, which we'll also get to at the end of this episode. In any case, Lisa talks in a confessional about Ron swaying her about Portia, But lady, you're a traitor. You knew she wasn't a traitor and probably wouldn't have been a secret traitor because there was two of you who were traitors as housewives. So weird that she was worried about that. She made the decision and kind of went along with everyone. The real issue is that it looked bad for her and looks bad for her, and that's why she's upset. Maybe she's doing the thing where she pretends in her head that she's a faithful. Maybe. So then, after breakfast, in the small groups that form, Kristen says she likes people and it's confusing to choose between like and trust. Lisa and then Candace pipe in with affirmations that they have the same issue. It felt really fake to me watching it, and their reactions to what Kristen is saying. I wonder how it would have played out in real time with all the other conversations that happen that we just don't see because of time and editing. Especially when Kristen asks Lisa why she thinks Ron is a traitor, and Lisa does not have a good answer or any real reasons other than, well, many reasons. He's been acting suspicious for a while. Tara chimes in with valid suspicions. They see a contrast with him being so quiet and reserved and then seeming different at Roundtable when he's defending himself or making accusations. That's the kind of thing that Lisa should have gone with or brought out. Another group that's talking has Michael, Natalie, Mara, and Rob. They talk about their Ron suspicions, but then also about Colton for being the ringleader the previous night. And this, of course, is also getting into Michael's head. So stay tuned for how this ends up for Michael. Ron says to Eric and Mark, I know I'll probably be banished, but that he's of a mind that it is Michael and Dorinda because she wouldn't really let Ron speak at Roundtable, and that she seems to back up Michael as, that's just how he is kind of excuse. I think his thoughts here are good, even though he's totally off, of course, but whoever he was accusing for going after would make sense that they might want to shut it down. But then why did he also throw out Mara as a traitor option and not bring it up here? She basically shut him down too. He doesn't seem to be considering her still. In a new group, Colton comes in with Kristen, Candace, and Jam Jam. And they ask for his thoughts on the Monet murder. He says he's thrown by it. Colton asks who they think, and Ron is brought up. Colton is hyperbolic about him being different at Roundtable and not doing anything on missions. Kristen counters him as seeing that Ron actually is helpful on missions and has been a team player. She had heard from Tara before about her thoughts about Ron and the contrast, but that Colton isn't bringing those specific things up. So Kristen is definitely contrasting with what Colton's saying, and of course she's suspicious of him. We get that aside from Kristen where she's suspicious of him because he doesn't ask questions of people really, he just goes. And I don't know how he is in real life. I assume he's probably very similar to that in his normal life, but definitely not a great trait to have as a faithful. Kristen exits the group with Candace and then tells her that she's really suspicious of Colton. In a confessional, she adds, I've worked with enough people in kitchens where they're so busy leading that they forget it's a team game. And Colton, he doesn't feel like a team player, she says. This is quite insightful, even though she's not correct about him being a traitor, of course. He definitely is more about him than about a team of faithful, or at least about a team of equals of faithful. In my opinion, I would not want to have a faithful like that on my team. You just can't trust them. Next in this episode, we get to the mission, and there are statues and a blood fountain. Apparently, there are shields hidden near the statues as a temptation for the players. If nobody takes one, then no murder tonight. So that's how things might go down, or the reason why they can keep any murder from happening. So if at least one person takes a shield, then that person is safe, but there will be a murder. They're to get in groups of 4. Seems like the best bet is trying to divide people they trust in each group. Hard to do unless you know, especially when there is no de facto leader other than Colton. Someone says only traitors would take a shield, and that is good, especially if it's not actually true. It's tempting for anyone, of course, just to ensure their own safety and lack of trust of other people. You can see the conflict raging in Colton the whole time because he feels pretty vulnerable right now. And I'm on two minds of this as well if I was there. If I was in Colton in the group of 4, they might know that I take a shield, and that puts me at risk from them. But then if I am a target for murder as an ultra faithful and I have a shield, then I am safe. And if I have a shield and they attempt to murder me, then I can deduce the people in my group were all faithful, because it would be a waste of a murder attempt for the traitors if they knew that I was safe. So not taking the shield, and if nobody else does, then we are all safe. So big gamble there. Meanwhile, in the mission, we get some funny takes from Tara. She was going into the water. I strictly like my water frozen. And then we have Candace and Lisa, not so much for getting wet and dirty as we'd expect of housewives. The first group out is Rob and his team. They find a statue and shield. Rob doesn't think it's worth the suspicions to try to take it. It would look just too suspicious. The second group doesn't look like they will take a shield either. And Colton is with Candace and Lisa in a group. Candace indicates that she wants to say things to try to convince him to use it or to take it. We don't see whether he is tempted, though. For the second statue, he does want to discuss it, or at least he says, and there are 4 shields there. He thinks he's a louder voice, which is true, and so therefore has a large target on his back, except he's not going after actual traitors, so there really is no target for them. Then we see the group of Johnny, Michael, Dorinda, and Natalie, who find the 4 shields. And Natalie says, I trust myself, but not everyone else. Trust, big in this episode. And we don't know what they decide either. It was here that I realized the traitors should have planned ahead and split up more among the teams. I'm looking at you, Lisa and Candace, staying together. Interesting that we get lots of clips of people saying that they like people but don't trust them. We get a confessional from Mara, for example. I imagine the editors are wanting us to try to guess whether people will vote based on like or trust. And we also see some scenes with Fergus. I've missed him this season. More Fergus, please. This episode started with him carrying a statue away. Now we get one with him floating in the fountain with a drink. Love the comic relief, especially now that we're missing Monet. And then Ron really has not been funny in this game or using his humor in this game. The comedy's been a little lacking now, other than laughing at people for being a silly goose, that is. After the mission is over, we get Stephen and Dorinda talking about Ron and who else to target after him. Ron comes in and confides his suspicion of Dorinda. At least he's throwing out accusations before Roundtable, even if he is not being wise about it. She is there and confused about why he's suspicious, since she has not written his name down. So she equates his being a traitor with people coming after him, which I guess would be good reasoning. But the traitors are not doing it because it would be too obvious. And her thinking is a bit too simplistic here. I get why, though. They don't really have much to go off of, or they're too entrenched in who they like and that they are trusting the wrong people. To be fair, also, Ron doesn't really give reasons for his suspicions except, using his mind. In another group, Colton says everyone who voted for Michael on night 1 are gone except Jam Jam, who is very worried. Of course, they're also kind of saying the same thing about Ron, so that's interesting. I wonder if that worry led him to taking a shield for himself, maybe. Then we get to a scene where Michael comes in and they try to trick him to revealing something. My problem is that they are not doing this with everyone and so are blind to other possibilities. Not doing the tricking with everyone and so are blind to other possibilities. I think they especially would catch Lisa if they did this. Michael sees through the ruse. Of course, he does start getting defensive and points out how Colton should be a little more low-key for someone who missed a big shot. Colton responds that if I miss a shot, I'm shooting again. Michael says something similar to the episode title, And Colton says that sounds like a threat of a traitor. Michael's response is that Colton should be more humble. The funny thing is that Colton eventually says the quote from the episode title about, if you're going to come for me, I'll finish you. But he says it in a confessional. And that's the crucial difference that Michael doesn't really understand about this game. Michael says he's aware of how he comes across when he is emotional and stepping on toes, but he does not seem to know how to stop himself. We don't really get to see the part at the end of last episode that was previewing this one, where Michael seemed to be accusing at least a couple different people, and someone other than Colton. I think it was probably just Colton for both. We get it from a different angle in this episode, so there wasn't a second person that he seems to be accusing at all. So that's an answer from last time to my query. Michael, in a confessional, says, among other things, the big mouths are starting to expose themselves. He's thinking Colton, but he needs to look in the mirror. He's digging his own grave with his big mouth and controversial takes. On to Roundtable. Candace speaks first, as expected from her, but also smart in where she takes it, asking if they want to talk about the shouting in the kitchen that included Michael and Colton. Michael does make a valid case and start of an emotional appeal about his charge against Colton and comparing himself, Michael, to Tiffany. I'm isolated because of him, and nobody in this room would be best at holding a secret than you. Uh-oh. That last part is where he lost it and lost the room. Not good. He's obviously insinuating about Colton's homosexuality. Everyone else takes offense. I think he probably did mean it the way everyone took it, but he couldn't help doubling down when he saw it backfire. His "I'm sorry you took it that way" is classic sorry not sorry bullshit apology from someone who's just not self-aware and who's narcissistic. An unexpected situation in this was Rob calling out Michael for his incorrect use of commiserating. I think Michael meant colluding, but also the joining together part of commiserating, just not the feeling bad part of the word. Ron points out that he thinks it's Michael and Dorinda, and they get into a bit here. She calls him a housewife hunter. He says he doesn't know them. He doesn't want to get to know people or them to know him. He feels like it would create bias and impede him pursuing who is a traitor. And I understand this take and this read from him. Maybe he just doesn't have it in him to be fake about it. We certainly have seen the toll it's taking on Candace to be friends with people and have to vote or murder them out. And throughout the episode, all the people talking about how they like people but don't trust them. Ron seems to not like people nor trust them. And unfortunately, in this game, it just ain't going to get you very far. Candace says she's still on Ron to be consistent. Then Michael speaks up and says Colton is next. Colton says Michael is lucky to have gotten this far. I agree with him there. People say they just don't want to be in the same room as him. Colton says, at this point, I don't even care what you say up there. Lots of other people seem to feel the same. Natalie says it first, but then also Eric and Mara. Michael makes fun of Eric's magic ears, proving that he knew his comment about Colton was offensive by trying to throw shade on someone different. From there, it just starts getting heated, and Alan has to step in. When we get to the votes, Ron and Michael are the only ones getting any, and we knew they would. I think it's probably good at this point to narrow it down for the voters to have just one or two people. You got to start figuring out who is and isn't a traitor when you've gotten rid of too many faithful. Ron gets votes from Lisa and Candace. She says her game is to stay consistent in her voting and emphasis. And for a traitor, I think that is good. It doesn't really get any heat on her for throwing names out or being all over the place. So bravo for Candace for having this strategy and continuing with it. It would be interesting to see if she would have done the same as an actual faithful. Ron's other votes come from Dorinda, so 3 housewives come after Ron. So the housewife hunter comment must have had some impact, at least a little bit. Michael, who of course has been suspicious of Ron in the past and probably doesn't want to anger Colton more at this point. And then Steven. So 5 of the votes. And then Michael gets everyone else. Colton, Eric, Johnny, Kristen, Jam Jam, Natalie, Rob, Mark, Era, Ron, and Mara, who says, I'm sick of the Michael show. You talk way too much, but you don't say a lot. And a lot of people were saying the same thing in their reasoning for voting Michael. In a confessional, Ron says the fact that Michael wasn't a traitor afterwards is making him second guess himself. He really needs to do something or say something to Dorinda about that. I don't know if it'll help his situation with her, but at least telling her that could help him in their eyes. I don't know if he will try, though, because of the game he's trying to play as a faithful. About Michael, we get other people saying he's gone, ding dong, tying him to a wicked witch made me laugh. Kristen, Eric, and Mark chat about their suspicions of Colton. Not necessarily that they absolutely think he is, but to definitely pay attention to him. And I think that's smart. Even though he is a faithful, he could be a recruit in the future as a prime, ultra faithful. You could try to recruit him as someone who maybe has suspicion but wouldn't be suspicious, maybe, or to get, if he feels like he has so much heat on him, it'll save him. Anyway, they should definitely pay attention, regardless of whether he's faithful or not, just the way he's playing the game. In another group, Colton talks of his suspicions of Lisa. He asks Dorinda if Lisa is normally as quiet, and about her going after Portia and her reactions at breakfast being, over the top every morning, or about having her, she gave great descriptions of the axe guys in the face-to-face murder because she saw it 3 times, he says. So his reasons here are really valid this time. I don't know why he took so long to get here, or if he just didn't see it as much until now because of the other people. Michael was clouding, maybe especially Colton's judgment, but he's finally putting it together about being wrong about Michael and Natalie. All of those things added up to be really damaging for Lisa now, though. And it would be hard as a traitor to play how you would normally play as a person because you don't want too much suspicion on yourself. It would be too easy to start second guessing how you would play, but when people really know you as a person, you need to be that way, which I think in a way Candace is playing that way. People think she's loud and opinionated and smart, and I think that Lisa's just being a little too quiet, trying to play the middle as a faithful when really people would expect her to be at the top, being out there and pushing, especially at Roundtable, putting names out and stuff rather than having Candace doing it all the time. Lucky for Lisa, though, Rob is in that group, and so eventually he tells them when they get to the tower. Lisa knows she needs to talk more and makes a plan to do so. I don't know how suspicious that will look now. She needs to play it calm and make a gradual change, or otherwise come up with a valid reason for now, all of a sudden, to be talking more. The traitors talk about going for Colton for their kill, but we don't know what they do at the end of the episode. Therefore, I can't know if I was right in my predictions yet. In the next time on preview, we see it's going to be the cabin in the woods. It'll be fun to see Lisa and Candace there since they didn't want to get wet and dirty in the water. Cabin in the woods is usually much, much, much worse than that. We'll see what happens with them and with who is going to be dining with death. I wonder if we will get 2 murders. I think that's likely. Michael had pointed that very thing out during this episode, especially if there are no murders tonight, which I think will happen. Next episode, episode 6, is titled Planning a Coup. So thinking through this episode and what we saw, I do not think anybody took a shield. I just don't see it happening. So no murder. So kind of changing my guess from last time. I will change it to 2 deaths from dinner, and my guess is it's going to be Colton and Kristen. This is a safer way, perhaps, for the traitors to do it with his suspicions on them, and I think Kristen is just a really smart player. Candace knows about Kristen's suspicions of Colton, but I don't see that mattering next episode, and I don't think that's part of the coup. What is the coup about? I think the banished player will next be Lisa, because it's just too obvious and Colton is too big a voice. So with that loss, I think that's why Candace is planning a coup against Rob. So that is the episode. I will be getting caught up as fast as I can, but feel free to leave spoiler-free, please, comments and thoughts on what we've talked about today. Visit us on your preferred social media channel and like and subscribe. And now, that's Jeff.
Want to keep the conversation going? Join us on social media and tell us how you would play it.